Starting. All right, we are live. So, all right, everybody, Chad Taylor here again. Great to see all of you. But tonight we got Nate Wolfe again with us as our guest, and just super awesome, to have him on again. And a lot of you guys have probably been seeing his videos. He's been putting out videos really consistently now, so it's just great to have him on again. Nate, how has it been in the last week or so? What kind of things have you been experiencing?
Yeah, it's been still kind of a roller coaster of sorts. I would say mostly good. As you know, when you start sticking your head up for truth, people want to knock it off. At least a few people do. And I think, it's only been about 10, 11 days out from my firing. So there's still, a bit of emotion in the church. And there's still a few people that are kind of, fired up about stuff. But most of the comments, most of the interactions I've had have been real positive. And we really appreciate, most of all, just the daily prayers, because that seems to really have helped us, a few times when we felt discouraged. But it's been busy because, I have three kids at the house, and two are in high school, and one's working full time. My wife is working. So, it's kind of crazy around our household. And here I am trying to do videos and, wrangle a couple of dogs and different schedules. But I've tried to stay active, especially to keep everybody informed about what's going on. And particularly tomorrow, I'll be traveling to Indiana. It's only 2.5 hours from me to go be with Rick Hummer. He's going to help me record in the studio for this first video that I'm going to do on biblical Earth, and be starting in Genesis chapter 1. So that'll be kind of the foundation for future videos that I'll do on biblical cosmology. So yeah, trying to stay busy, a lot going on. So most of it positive. So that helps.
Yeah, no, that's great. I think I chat with you in one form or another, seems like almost every day. So it's
Yeah.
great to hear all that you have going on. And it's just, and it's great that you get to, go hang out with Rick Hummer and do some videos with him. And,
Yeah.
a month ago, did you think you'd be doing all of this?
No, I mean, let's see, what's the date? The 26th. So a month ago, well, the 26th of August was the
Yeah.
last day of the Take on the World 18 conference. So, we're only about 30 days out or so from that. And, a few weeks ago, I was just talking to you, asking for prayers and giving a few updates. And, then on the 15th, so 11, yeah, well, 15th, 11 days ago is when I got fired. So things are, happen so quickly. Uh,
Wow.
but yeah, it's been mostly good, and a lot of exciting things, hopefully for the future. So
Oh, that's great. Well, I think tonight we only have about 15 minutes left.
sure.
And so, but we wanted to get into the subject of NASA, and there's something in
Yeah.
particular you wanted to share regarding NASA. And I know
Yeah.
we talked about this a couple weeks ago, and now's the time.
Sure. Well, I got this interesting email. It was probably, I got it maybe like a week or so before I got fired. And of course, I was, pretty much after the conference. That opened my eyes to some things. And I was already pretty convicted on biblical Earth. But just being around the people and just having that experience, and then the fervent prayers the last few weeks before the conference and after, just really helped with our awareness of things. And wouldn't you know, you did your NASA, one of your NASA vids a couple of weeks ago with the guy that was going through with all of his cameras and all that. And it was around that time that I got this email from a fellow minister in my area. And I'm just going to read. It was just a really short email, but he says to me, I received a phone call from a preacher in Florida who said that a member of his congregation who works for NASA will be in the Toledo area the week of September 17th through the 21st. He says, I was informed that this brother has a lesson concerning creation. Okay, so that, the term NASA and creation and all that,
Mhm.
those are some big flags. And that he has presented this at several congregations in Florida. and he would be willing to make it here, the Toledo area, free of charge on Wednesday the 19th. So, I looked at that and I'm like, okay, this guy's a NASA employee, and I don't know who he is, but the big red flags here. He works for NASA. It seems like he's going to be in the Toledo area on specific range of dates. It almost kind of sounds like he's going on tour, uh, in different population centers. And it says that he has a lesson concerning creation. Now, I don't know what he teaches because I haven't seen a video. I don't know how to get a hold of that. But one thing I do know is that if he's a NASA employee, he's probably showing NASA pictures, images, I should say. They don't really have real pictures, but images,
Mhm.
composites, artist renditions, drawings, whatever you want to call it. And he may be 100% sincere in what he's doing. He may believe 100% in what he's teaching. But I just thought the chances are really slim that a NASA employee is going around giving a true biblical cosmology lesson. So that just was interesting to me. And so, since you had done a couple of vids on NASA, I thought I would share that with you and, see what you thought about that.
Yeah. No, it's an interesting subject, and to me, what stands out is that he's a current employee, right?
Yes, yes,
Yeah,
he is a
so
current employee of NASA. I don't know him personally, but so he says that he's a believer. He is a member of the church down in Florida, so he probably is, and he may be very sincere. But just a lot of red flags. And I've been in ministry with congregations, volunteer and or paid full time for almost 24 years, and I have to tell you that in all of my experience, nobody comes to share something for free. Not to say everybody's asking for a bunch of money, but the minimum is, hey, I can be in your area, or I'm gonna be in your area. Can you help with some travel expenses or something like that? But typically, if someone's going to speak, you pay for their expenses, and then some of the going rates, depending on which church you're with and whatnot, could be as high as say $100 per speaking session. So if someone was to come into town and do like a weekend seminar of some kind, and say they spoke, once on Friday night and three times on Saturday and one time on Sunday, that might be like a $400, $500 deal. So it just seemed very odd that it was stressed that this would be for free.
mm,
And we know that nothing in life is free, right? So either he's paying his own expenses, which is possible, but I just had this feeling that, even if he's very sincere, maybe NASA is helping to pay for some of his travel expenses, because he is an employee, and it does say in the letter that he has spoken at several congregations in Florida.
mm.
So apparently that's where he started, since that's where he lives, but he must be branching out a bit. So I just thought that's a little odd.
Yeah. I'd be curious to see some of his, if anybody recorded any kind of videos, that'd be interesting to see.
Yeah,
But to me, what really stands out is like the video that I did, it was critiquing Jared Polin or something like that in the
hmm
title, and who's a popular
hmm
photographer,
yeah,
tours NASA, and you see all these
yeah,
NASA employees, and you know darn well there's some good, honest, hardworking Americans that are Christians that work for NASA, without a
sure,
doubt.
yeah, yeah,
Absolutely. And so all it really takes is, in hindsight, looking back, that
yeah,
I'm sure you and I, the way we grew up knowing the cosmos and knowing that Earth is some planet flying through space, and the stuff we grew up with, we had to fit our understanding of the Bible into that. And
yes,
so that's how we read our Bible. That's how we somehow
mhm,
deciphered our Bible. And somehow we worked it in our heads that it all fit together. And so I'd be surprised if this guy is just a Jesus follower that is very,
mhm,
very much nerdy into space stuff, that
yeah,
somehow has twisted scripture to fit that, like we all have done. And so to me, I see that. And then, but is there more nefarious stuff behind the scenes? Who knows? Maybe. I mean, there could certainly be knowledgeable, deliberate
yeah,
deception going on where somebody standing there preaching something knows what he's saying is wrong.
Yeah.
But is he like that or not? Who knows? I have no idea. But I do see behind the scenes a spiritual aspect,
Yes.
the real string pullers, the more demonic stuff behind the scenes. Certainly see using aspects of this. And I mean, what kind of congregation wouldn't be like, hey, we have this NASA person coming in and he's a NASA scientist or whatever?
Yeah.
Most people would love that.
Sure.
I would assume. And the great thing, you brought up so many great points, and this is one of them about being in what you've gone through and in the position you've been in, is that you have insight that I don't have and that most of us don't have, as far as, like, you talk about the speaking and
Mhm.
speaking fees and all these kind of things. So just having you in your shoes discuss things is such a breath of fresh air. I got to say that.
I'm glad to hear that. Yeah, the situation that of a minister getting fired for this kind of truth is not unusual. It's becoming more and more usual. But I guess the some of the specifics about how it happened to me, it happened so sudden. It was just handled in such an unchristian, unloving way. That you question the motives for that and where their thinking was, but then also just the extreme nature that I went to a conference on my vacation, hadn't actually taught anything that I believed or was investigating, had a good track record at the church, was known as a person of a character, as a person who was reasonable, not a drama queen, not a troublemaker, not somebody who would hijack a pulpit, for his own pet projects. And I even had a track record at the church of approaching the eldership, the leadership, on different subjects, asking, "Hey, would you guys be willing to sit down with me and talk about this or study that?" So it was just so out of the ordinary. I believe there was some personal motives and some hardness of heart there, but like you said, the spiritual part of it, I think, was there because the spirit that was in that room was not the normal spirit that I usually dealt with these men. Most of the time, these men were good, good to me. We had our little, disagreements and things, but over a 7.5 year period, the typical day to day was much better than what I experienced. But I felt like there may have been some type of demonic influence there. I don't know exactly what that would be, but it didn't feel good at all. It wasn't just that I got fired; it just felt off, spiritually off. Like, this doesn't make any sense to me. Why is this happening the way it is?
Hmm.
But yeah, so some very specific things in my situation, I guess, have allowed God to use me in some specific and special ways. But I'm really hoping that others will come forward that have experienced, a firing, or not even just getting fired, but being told, "Don't speak about this." If you do this, you're going to be fired or whatever. Um, and then other just Christians, who aren't in full time ministry, have experienced similar things, ridicule, being ostracized. So yeah, it is interesting how God has used that, and so much has happened in 10 days, Chad. I feel like this has been like a 1 year long deal.
Wow.
So God's moving fast.
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting to me. It just these scenarios in general. If we just kind of step back and say, okay, when people that speak the truth tend to get the boot for the most part,
Yeah.
because it's the truth is hard to digest, right? And but then so other churches, for instance, will be more than happy to bring in somebody that has some authority. And so think of this. I really think of it this way, and I brought this up in my video I did. Is would any of us have some army person walk up and start preaching, or other military stuff? Because I mean, if it's just a title, if we just picture the title, well, I don't trust the heads of any branch of any government that we have. I don't. I trust the soldiers. I trust the military members that to do their thing. I have lots of friends and family in the military,
Hmm.
lots of respect for them. But it's like, do you trust what you get from the military? Do you trust all the info we get? And I don't think anybody watching this, or very few, would say, "Yeah, I trust 100%
Yeah.
everything we get from the government." But yet, we're totally okay having NASA come in front of us and preach to us about things. And
Yeah.
why is that? Because NASA is just another branch of the, part of the Department of Defense government. As far as I know, it's Department of Defense, but it's from the government, and they're the gatekeepers of what's above us. They
Yeah.
filter everything. And so thank God we got the technology that we have to where we can start doing our own investigations and we're not stuck, with
Yeah.
500-year-old technology. So,
Yeah, and they didn't count on the, the Nikon P900 and the P1000 and
yeah.
just people getting out there and doing experiments, laser experiments across lakes and all kinds of stuff. But yeah, I think it's important that people realize that NASA is a government agency
Mhm.
and it is funded in large part through our taxes. I
Yeah.
mean, it's allotted a yearly budget, but a lot of that comes from the taxes that our government collects.
Mhm.
And so, it is kind of frustrating when you think about that. And like you said, it's not that the regular military folks, are a problem. It is the heads of state and different things that we know that they lie. They lie, they cover up. Many quote unquote conspiracies over the years, after enough time, have been proven as a fact. You look at the Kennedy assassination and other things. So yeah, and it's always under the idea of what's best for the public, national security and whatnot. When a lot of times it seems like it's more securing power and position, right? And deception is a big part of that game,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
Yeah. You keep the people confused and in fear. You can do just about anything to them.
Or yeah,
So,
and just or mesmerized like NASA, mesmerizes people. I mean, look, I was a huge sci-fi geek. I've been in a period of mourning and lamentation since I realized that NASA was completely bogus. And as I got into biblical Earth, flat Earth, scriptures and videos and things, it didn't take very long to find a bunch of NASA's bloopers
yeah.
on everybody's YouTube. And I mean, some of them were just so obvious, not just like the crazy hairspray and all that, but I'm talking about the one where there's a male and female, astronaut. They're supposedly on the ISS, and they start chatting with somebody, and the guy and one of the astronauts says something like, "Yeah, like where we are right here in Pennsylvania." Then he goes, and the astronaut, the female astronaut next to him, is kind of like, you know, it's you can totally tell he just, it was a slip.
Mm,
He told the truth. He got too
yeah.
loose in his
Yeah.
conversation. He told the truth. His partner's freaking out. She looked like, somebody just died.
Yeah.
And so just videos like that, and the guys bouncing around in their harnesses, and I mean, they take us for complete fools.
Mhm.
And so, we have to do the research for ourselves, and I encourage people to watch those videos, for themselves. But
Yeah, if all the space stuff was real, if the spacewalks and ISS stuff was real, there should never be a single, error with blue screen, with
yes,
green screen stuff, with things that are supposed to be floating, not floating, with wires
yeah,
and harnesses. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. And there's
yeah,
countless videos out there. But I think a lot of people want to remain in their blissful ignorance. They just choose to keep that facade going.
yeah,
And it's unfortunate. And I'm not going to say the lady's name, but I've heard this from lots of people where they have, say, a husband or a wife. Either way, I've seen it both ways, where the one person is totally down with biblical cosmology, and the other spouse is like diehard space
yeah,
NASA nut. And so that is one subject, because that can be like a religion, with all that space. And we all grew up with, Stars Trek, Star Wars. I love Star Wars
mhm.
growing up, but it's like
Oh
you
yeah,
said, it's like a period of mourning just to say that was a big lie. That doesn't exist. This
yeah.
this thing right here, and
Oh,
you
you
got one
got
of
one.
these.
You got one of those too? Okay,
Yeah,
yeah. Check this out.
you're
So this is a stress relief squeezy thing that my daughter, when she was in DC on her eighth grade DC trip a couple years ago, actually, it was right after I started kind of waking up, and I had been talking with her about NASA, and so she was at a gift shop there in DC, and she picked this up. She's like, "Dad, check this out. It's one of those squeezy stress things." So I keep it around, in case I get stressed out, I can squeeze it. But anyway, yeah, it's just laughable, and I'm ashamed of myself for what I believed over the years. But my indoctrination started at age 4 in 1977 when Star Wars, came out on the big screen, and I was hooked. And then I was into all the Star Trek. I watched the old original Star Trek and Next Generation and all kinds of spin-offs and um, you know, uh, all these movies. I mean, I'm a movie buff. I watch all kinds of sci-fi movies, you name it. I've seen it probably multiple times. And so now it's like when that stuff comes out, I'm just like, really, but yeah, we got to get the message out and let people look for themselves, because as you don't have to look that hard to see video from NASA. It's their live feeds, it's their whatever's. And if a person is really honest, they're going to see stuff that they can't deny is faked.
Hmm.
But like you said, some people just don't want to go there. It's kind of like in a similar vein, a lot of people don't want to get too deep into the scriptures, right? Because deep down inside, I'm not saying they're consciously thinking this, but subconsciously they know that if I really get diligent in my study and fervent prayer in that study, trying to understand God's truth and how I can be a better servant, they know that truth is going to convict them. And many people don't want to deal with that.
Hmm.
So it's the same kind of thing, maybe a little different context, but we know that if we open ourselves and open our hearts and minds, we might get convicted on something, and if we're convicted, then we might have to make a big change.
Yeah. I've heard
And
that. I've heard the saying, the greatest fear of man is the fear of change,
yeah,
and if you, like you said, you dig into the scriptures, you dig into certain subjects, it's going to force you to make a decision,
yes,
which the hard one is the fear of change. So,
yeah,
well, Nate, I got to get running,
yeah,
and but thank you for the chat. Thank you for coming on. I know it was short, but I just, this subject, we could spend hours and hours talking about the subject, and just what comes to my mind is, like you said, the movies, and so with TV and stuff like that. Well, what do we do with our kids? Like the beginning of most movies, what do you see? Is this big, huge spinning ball in space
yes,
is the opening to many, many movies. I fast forward through that every single time, like do 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 do, and there's just things that we're aware. And so, like for instance, Rick Hummer, you're going to be at his place tomorrow. He did a great talk in Ohio at Take on the World 18 about movies and how effective they are,
yeah,
and at getting people to be deceived, really. And also Jared Cressman, his talk, I have that on my channel as well, about NASA, the foundations and the origins of NASA. And that was just a great talk that he did, and how it's like, wow, very, very occultic.
yeah. It's
And
pervasive. You can't get away from it.
yep. And
Everywhere you
so
turn.
so and so you're going to be at his place tomorrow, and then we got I know you got a lot of stuff in between now and then that
Yeah,
you're going to be doing, but you're going to be at FEI, Flat Earth International Conference in Denver.
yeah.
We're going to be room buddies, it sounds like.
Yeah, yeah, it's a very good price for the Flat Earth International, but still it's like I think maybe 135 bucks. And since I got fired 10 days ago, I was like, "Hey, Chad, are you going? Oh, by the way, you want to split a room?" So, that'll be nice for both of us. And I'm also going to be down at the Skyfall 18 conference with Dean Odell.
That's
So
just that's next week, isn't it?
yeah, it's actually the 5th, October 5th and 6th, but we'll be doing some traveling to visit our son who's in college down south. So for me, right on the end of that will just be a little hop, skip, and a jump over to Alabama. And I'm not an official speaker, but I will maybe have an opportunity to share a little bit of testimony during that time. They have some testimony time built in at Skyfall. And then for the FEIC 18 in Denver, I'm really just there to kind of meet people, network, and kind of soak in that experience, because I've never been to the big Flat Earth conference. So I'm very much excited about that. And we'll see the Question Everything 19 is in California. in end of February. As you know, you'll be out there. So I'm going to see about maybe getting out there if the timing is right and everything lines up. So, but I appreciate you having me on. I always enjoy it, and looking forward to the next time too.
Yeah, and shout out your YouTube channels if people aren't familiar with
Sure.
you.
Yeah, so I started out with Discerning Dad 73. That was kind of the my kids bugging me saying, "Hey, you got to get a YouTube channel and do some teaching," where I taught on Nephilim and angels and giants. But I'm really hoping folks will make sure they get over to the Fired for Truth channel, which is my new channel. And that one is where I'm going to more exclusively be posting videos and things related to biblical cosmology. So if you're over at Discerning Dad 73 and you haven't gone to Fired for Truth, please do that as soon as you're able to, because that's going to be more active as far as biblical truth is concerned. Uh, so yeah, that would be the best one probably to follow me if you're interested in this subject.
Perfect. Well, I'll put links in the description of this video too for bringing people over to you, so they
Cool.
can go right to you. It's easy to
Thank you
find.
very much. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, Nate Wolfe, I sure love having you on, and I got to get running, but thanks for coming on. We'll be chatting soon.
All right. Thanks, Chad. Take
All right.
care.
You're welcome. Have a good night.
You too.